Brandon Baker might be one of the most talented young offensive linemen in this college football season. He was the number one offensive tackle and a top 25 overall recruit in 2024. Came out of Mater Dei, chose Texas over Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, and immediately looked like a future NFL starter because his feet, patience, and pass protection were just there. In 2025, he took over as a first-year SEC starter, played 13 games, took 500 pass blocking snaps, and did not allow a sack all season. But it's not a perfect evaluation. He did allow 23 pressures, drew 12 penalties, and the run game is still more positioning than power. So today we're breaking down Brandon Baker, my offensive tackle number 5, why the ceiling is still high, why the arrow is pointing up, and why his final NFL position may come down to whether Texas keeps him at a tackle or moves him into guard. Before we get into all that, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, follow along as we keep putting in this work. With Brandon, we are at 69 on our way to 100 before college football kicks off. Welcome back to Draft Yoda, where we're data-driven and prospect-focused. Brandon Baker is currently sitting at 8.82 out of 10, making him number 69 overall. Offensive tackle number 5 going into this year. And Baker has the one thing every offensive line coach wants to bet on: pass protection tools. The feet are real, patience is real, the frame control is real, and he's a 5-star. You know, and when you watch him settle into pass sets, you see why he was viewed as the number one offensive tackle in his recruiting class. But he's not a finished product. Yes, he allowed 0 sacks, but the pressure numbers tell you they're still stressful reps. They just didn't get home. 23 pressures, 12 penalties, and the run game is still more positioning than force. So is Brandon Baker a long-term tackle? Is he a guard? Or is he one of those high-level offensive linemen that can survive in multiple spots because the feet are just that good? Baker came out of Mater Dei High School, Santa Ana, California, and everybody who follows here has heard me talk about Mater Dei at some point in time with one of these prospects because they just keep putting kids out. It's one of the biggest high school, football factories in the country. Competition is real, coaching is real, the expectations are huge. And being the number one offensive tackle in the 2024 recruiting class, being a top 25 overall recruit, pressure was real as well. He earned early playing time at Texas, and it stands out because the staff used him at both tackle and guard. And that versatility helps his profile. In 2025, he took over as the right tackle, and his first real test was brutal. Ohio State on the road in his first career start against one of the most talented edge groups in the country. That's baptism by fire. And it was not clean. Ohio State edge rushers overwhelmed him for 5 pressures in that opener, but he didn't give up a sack. Those 5 pressures could have wrecked the young season, could have shaken his confidence. It could have created a weakness that followed him all year, but he didn't let that happen. He got better week by week. The feet settled, his patience improved, his timing improved, and the frame control improved as well. Across 13 games in 2025, Baker played a major workload: 500 pass snaps, 373 run snaps. He allowed 23 pressures, no sacks though, and he drew 12 penalties. That's a push and pull in this evaluation. No sack numbers is impressive. That many snaps, no snacks. There's no snaps that many snaps with no sacks is an impressive thing. But 23 pressures tells you people were still able to get enough on him, and he was having to win late in the rep to keep the grade. It keeps the grade measured. That's that's why you can't just stop at the sack column. You have to look at the full picture. Did he keep the quarterback clean? Did he give up hurries? Did he force the ball out of it? Did he need help? Um, and Baker's answer is kind of somewhere in the middle. He survived early, he improved later, and the best tape came at the end. I will point out his best tape coincided with Arch Manning's best tape. I don't know if the two are related with such a limited sample size, but it was an interesting part of the evaluation that got circled. The Michigan bowl game is one of the reasons I'm so high on him still, because by the end of the year, Baker was playing his best football, closed out the season with nearly flawless pass protection outing against Michigan's front. You want young offensive linemen to improve throughout the season. You want the best tape to come late. You want to see the player learn from their early mistakes, and Baker did that. The Ohio State opener showed a problem. The Michigan bowl game showed growth. And when a 5-star in tackle improves that much from September to January, you keep betting on the development. His feet, Baker has a technician's feet. It's the foundation of the evaluation. He's quick into his pass set. He doesn't panic. He very rarely lunges. He does not open his hips early just because a rusher threatens with speed. That's advanced for a young tackle. A lot of young offensive linemen, they panic early. They turn their hips too early. They reach, they lunge, and they give up interior counters. Baker was more patient than that. He wants to stay square. He wants to keep his frame under control. He wants to mirror. And that gives him a real tackle foundation. His pass blocking clearly outpaces his run game right now. And in today's game, that matters. You teach the run game power. You can add mass. You can improve hand placement. You can build play strength. But pass protection feet are harder to find. And Baker already has the hardest part. He can set, he can mirror, he can stay balanced, he can handle speed rushers, and he can control himself against power rushers. And that kind of early showing for him is something to be impressed by and excited for. Baker plays like a former 5-star with real technical background. He understands how to position his body. He does not waste a lot of movement. He's not a sloppy mover. He can keep himself square long enough to force rushers to declare. That matters because the tackle's about patience. If you commit too early, great rushers will make you wrong. If you stay controlled, you make them work. The improvement curve is one of the biggest positives in this entire evaluation. 5 stars, sometimes they come in thinking they know everything, and you can see them get humbled early, and it affects them through the season. Baker just kept getting better every game. He adapted, he learned, he corrected, he played with more confidence, and he closed out with his best football. Offensive line development is not instant, especially in the SEC, especially when you're facing those elite athletes. The question's not whether the young tackle loses reps, because they all do. The question is whether they lose and keep repeating the same reasons they lost. The position versatility for Baker, he played tackle. He worked in at guard. And Texas has used the versatility to get his athletic ability on the field. That could matter a lot for the NFL. Teams may view him as a tackle with developmental upside. They may view him as a guard with elite feet. Some may see him as a swing lineman, you know, as a positional guy they can move across the board until he settles more into a long-term position. And that flexibility raises his score. Um, Nobody's perfect. I've said it every single time. Nobody's perfect. The first concern is the penalties. 12 penalties is a glaring number. Penalties kill drives, false starts, holds, hands to the face, illegal formation, whatever the mix is, the result is the same. You put the offense behind schedule, you put them behind the numbers, and in one-score NFL games, those mistakes get magnified. Baker can't be the player who protects well for 55 snaps and then wipes it out in 2 drives with flags. And that's the first major cleanup area for him. The second is the pressure total. Yes, you gave up 0 sacks, and that's phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. But the hurries that came off of it, the quick throws that came off of it, did those bail you out of not giving up a snap? Giving up a sack? God, that's the question. And it matters. I'm not saying that pass protection is bad. I'm actually, it's actually his best part of this game. But the tape is not clean, as 0 sacks allowed says. 8.82 or higher. 8.82 is why he's not higher with 0 sacks allowed. He still allowed pressure, and he allowed them pretty consistently. He needs to improve his run game as well. The run game is the weaker half of the profile. Baker moves bodies more by position than force. He can cover defenders. He can use his feet. He's not consistently uprooting people. And for a man of his size, I would expect some people to be moved. Which makes me question, his strength. He has the frame and the quickness, but he still needs to play with more force. And that's especially true when he's moving inside. At guard, the game is more compact. Defensive tackles are more powerful. Contact happens faster. And you have to displace, you have to anchor, and you have to win through your hips and hands. Baker's feet are good enough. The question is whether the strength and finish can catch up. Final question is, what is your position? Are you a guard or are you a tackle? Are you both? That's a question that needs to get answered. Moving into 2026, Texas is going to keep him at tackle to start the season. With his growth over the last 6 games of the season, 6 or 7 games of the season, he earned the right to stay at tackle. If Texas moves him inside a guard, he has to show he can play with more force and handle bigger bodies in tighter spaces. Either way, the checklist is pretty clear. Cut down on the penalties, turn those 12 flags into much cleaner numbers. Reduce the pressure total, but keep the sack number low. Improve on your run game displacement. Play heavier through contact, and make your final position easier to project. If he does that, he climbs, because the talent is not the question. The cleanup is the question. Currently sitting at an 8.82 out of 10, number 69 overall, offensive tackle number 5, former 5-star offensive tackle with high-end pass production, patience, strong frame, versatility on the offensive line. Playing 13 games, logging 500 pass blocking snaps, and not allowing a sack. Those are the headlines. That's the case. The concern is the penalties. The concern is the pressures. And you gotta square that up. You gotta figure it out, and you gotta fix it. That's my board. That's what I think about Brandon Baker. You tell me, do you think he's a tackle? Is he a guard? Could he be both at the next level? How much do you trust young linemen who don't allow a sack but still give up pressure and penalties while they're developing? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy these videos, these player evaluations, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and follow along for more. We are on our way to 100 or more prospects before college football kicks off. As always, I'm Draft Yoda, Bill Workman, your favorite draft nerd's favorite draft nerd. We'll catch you guys in the next.